Hi, beautiful women. Thank you so much for being here with me. I want to go ahead and get started right away with giving you some information that you can use to feel really good in your body now, as soon as possible. We are going to do 6 weeks together, and something that I want you to begin doing first is a practice called Breath of Fire. We are going to be doing this meditation every day for 40 days. It's only 11 minutes, and we'll combine it each week with a different Kundalini Yoga Kriya, which is a yoga set, probably about 10 minutes. So you'll be doing about 20 minutes per day of yoga and meditation, which I think is a good amount of time. It's not too long to where you're feeling like you have to really spend a whole lot of time doing something that you don't have time for, but you also will receive the benefits from it almost immediately, especially the yoga kriyas. So with the yoga kriyas, which I will send to you in PDF format most likely, those you'll try for a week, and you'll see how they work with you. You probably don't need to do something every day for more than a week to figure out if it's working for you. The exception to this is something like Breath of Fire, which is going to be breath work mostly, and it's going to be for 40 days. So it's sort of a specific practice that is also very meditative, but it's in its own sort of category. The reason that I like to begin with Breath of Fire is that it helps clear trauma. And we can't move forward to live in an energized life, to be who we came to be, if we are stuck in trauma. Trauma is lodged in the body. It's not our fault that we have come in and incarnated in a time when we sort of get all of this trauma happens to us, but it is our responsibility to clear it, and with help you can. So I really am big on getting started on a 40-day practice, because at the end of the 40 days, you will be changed, and it will be miraculous, and it will be wonderful. But you need to commit to doing the breath work. It's a really beautiful practice, and I will share with you how to do it as well. Just also to remind you that it is part of how we're clearing trauma, and we will talk a little bit more about that too. The Kriya for this week is for the nervous system, and it's for balancing the blood. I like to start as soon as possible with this idea that our blood needs to be balanced, and it's a big sort of philosophy in Kundalini Yoga as well. So the red and white blood cells get balanced, and any kind of anemia or sort of prone to anemia that might be happening can more easily be fixed. Not just with this Kriya, but if you need supplements, or if you need to see a physician for a higher dose iron, something more serious along those lines, it can be addressed. But I want to get you going with that soon, because one of the fastest ways to feel more energized is to have balanced blood. When we have appropriate iron levels, which can be really hard for women to keep up with, that's like the first step. Make sure you have enough blood in your body. Make sure your blood is balanced. And this Kriya also helps our nervous system. And our nervous systems are sort of where trauma gets lodged. So supporting the nervous system, beginning the support of the blood is all really important to do, kind of starting as soon as possible. So I will send you information on that as well. The reason that I talk a lot about blood work in this online course is that I'm a trained midwife who has a history of anemia that was actually not caught by Western medicine until it was almost too late. And so I'm really passionate about making sure that women get appropriate CBC and iron panels to make sure their blood work is where it needs to be. Because if you're tired all the time, I want to know from the beginning that you've gotten blood work done and that you know where your numbers are with regard to an iron count. Your hemoglobin, I like to see that at least 12. And a ferritin, I like to see at least 50. I learned from a very wonderful hematologist that if you have restless leg, or if your ferritin drops below 50, say it's more like around 30, which is sort of what I have been seeing, or I saw as a midwife, is that you don't sleep as well. So the second thing we need to do is get really good sleep. And we will talk about that as well. But to get good sleep, you can't be up all night while your spleen is making new red blood cells because your ferritin is low. And the ferritin is the component that women lose because if we have really heavy periods, that's where that component of blood gets removed from our body. So that's why I'm really passionate about getting our blood work just with iron, which is really a basic panel. It's not hard to interpret unless you have something very complicated going on. And if you do, that's a totally different story. But just making sure your iron levels are up and you're able to sleep is like the first thing I want to address. So I'm also an herbalist. I've studied in the Mayan tradition. I studied at Rosita Arvigo in Belize at her place with her to study spiritual healing and to learn about the herbal medicine from the rainforest. And so I'm a mostly Western herbalist. I'm also a kinesiologist, a Reiki master, and a craniosacral therapist. And in my off time, I'm a writer. I just like to throw that in there in case people think that I actually don't do anything else in life. I do try to also enjoy myself doing other things other than just yoga and meditation. I don't want people to ever feel like they need to be like a monk. I feel like we need to have an actual life. But back to meditation. The benefit of meditation is, so it's almost like insurance. Like you always have it in your back pocket to be able to use. You start learning how to control the breath, how to deepen the breath, how to keep the breath connected, and you're really anchoring your soul here on earth. You're anchoring your power, your prana here on earth, and it makes you more powerful and it makes you more secure, and it really helps to dissolve blocks and dissolve trauma. So I am really big on starting our meditations this week by doing Breath of Fire from the beginning. I think it's a wonderful practice. So here is how to do Breath of Fire. The easiest way to begin doing Breath of Fire is just to sit in tailor sit, cross-legged, and to have an equal in-breath and an equal out-breath through the nose. And it doesn't have to be fast, although you will hear or see it a lot of the times go very fast. It's more that you want to be gentle with it. I'm not kind of in this hysterical mode. And if you need to at first focus on the out breath, that can really help, because at first it's not an intuitive way to breathe, especially because we breathe so differently. But the other very important thing to do is, and in Kundalini Yoga, you'll see this in a lot of different kriyas and practices, is that we pump our navel, which means that the navel point, which in Kundalini Yoga is below the belly button, it's the second chakra, which we'll do a lot of work on here, gets movement during the in-breath and the out-breath. And it strengthens your core, and it's part of how we become powerful and part of how this breath work can really work for us. So with Breath of Fire, the most important thing is to really relax when you do it. And it's going to sound something like this. If you need to go slower, you can. You really don't want to do. You will hear other people who go that fast, but it's always sort of more important to go deeper, be gentle, and be accurate than to kind of go faster. That's a general rule of thumb with everything that we're going to do here, whether it's energy work and embodiment or the hands-on womb massaging or just our own practice of meditation. The other benefit of Breath of Fire is that it helps to regulate the autonomic nervous system. So where stress is held in our nervous system and kind of gets off kilter and off balance, Breath of Fire helps to relieve this. We are all born breathing in a circular pattern, and all animals breathe in a circular pattern. That means they do this deep circular breathing without pausing between the in and the out breath. So just more of a relaxed, connected in and out. And in general, especially after experiencing trauma or just day-to-day life situations, we are not breathing as deeply as we could be. Also, when we practice and learn to breathe more deeply, we get more energized. We have more oxygen that's circulating in our bodies, especially in our brains and in our blood, and everything starts to work a little bit better. So again, Breath of Fire is the practice that I want you to do starting today or as soon as possible for 40 days. And it's going to be part of what will help regulate the autonomic nervous system. The other thing I wanted to suggest around trauma is to read a book called Trauma is Really Strange. So whenever we come up against a situation where nothing really seems to make sense or something's coming out of the blue, it's always important to step back and think, what is really going on here? We'll talk a lot about how to use our intuition better. But one of the surefire signs that there's trauma is involved, either in yourself, in your own body, or you're dealing with someone who has trauma, is that there's just a really strange scenario occurring. And so it's really important to recognize this and say, okay, this is what I'm observing. I'm observing trauma, or something really strange kind of going on in your body. That's also a red flag that you've experienced trauma and it's really calling for you to heal it. And with the use of Breath of Fire, it's just a really like a shortcut to being able to release the trauma and to learn to breathe again in a way that is the best for your body. We are also going to start this week on adding an abdominal massage. And this, once you get used to doing it, I think it might take 3 minutes. And I'm also sending you in a separate PDF how to do the abdominal massage. It's really important as women that we take care of our womb. There are a lot of studies, and cross-culturally, it's just sort of like the seat of our health and the seat of our power. And when our uterus is in a good place and is supported literally and working well, the rest of our bodies tend to follow. So one of the reasons that we do the Mayan abdominal massage, and again, we're just going to focus on the uterus, is that we are able to sort of save this organ. Hysterectomies are one of the number one surgeries done in America. It was actually offered to me. I'll kind of talk a little bit more about my story later. But another thing that gets us needing to do more work hands-on top of our bodies to massage is if we've been given ineffective prescriptions, hormones. I've done the pill. I've also done an IUD. If those are not working for you and you need to get off of them, then doing this massage will help regulate your hormones eventually. It won't happen overnight, but it's something that we can do instead of taking hormones. Even the sort of bioidenticals can be kind of weird on our systems. I like talking about weird illnesses because I've had them for a lot of my life, almost all of my adult life. And so what I tell my clients is bring the funk. I have seen almost everything. And there's some weird stuff that happens in our bodies that can't be explained or treated by Western medicine. As a disclaimer, I always tell people to get a physical, get a thorough checkup, and get at least a CBC and make sure there's not something super serious going on. But usually what we're dealing with is trauma stuck in the body that kind of is expressing itself in very unusual ways. A lot of the time it does lodge in our female anatomy for women. And so that looks like really crazy periods, most of the time, really crazy periods, or really wacky hormonal stuff happening. So this abdominal massage is a way to start listening and treating your own body. And it's very super effective. I had crazy periods most of my life. Bled for lots and lots of years every month without really sort of being able to catch up. And after a while, I was extremely ill. They actually didn't know how I survived. My hematologist was just blown away because my numbers had gotten so bad. I almost died from anemia. And so I'm really passionate, again, about women keeping their own blood and keeping their own organs in their bodies. When I started doing the abdominal massage, that's when I really turned a corner. I had been given prescription iron, and that did help, but it didn't keep me from bleeding as much. And then I was still bleeding more than I needed to. But once I started doing the abdominal massage, I wasn't bleeding as much. Within 1 month, I had more or less a normal period where it was 3 to 4 days. There was maybe one heavy day, which was a complete turnaround from having 10-day super heavy periods. So I love doing abdominal massage. It's something you have to do at least once a day as well as a way to take care of yourself. But once you get the hang of it, it is easy to do, and it's worthwhile. It's worth investing in that. Another thing that we're going to do here, and we'll focus on a little bit later, is doing some journaling. It's really important because when we activate our voices, we really activate our power. The second chakra and the third chakra, where we have a lot of creation and a lot of power going on, is also associated with the fifth and sixth chakras, which are with our expression center and our pituitary gland in the third eye. And it's also just a way to process during all of this stuff. You have a story about your life, and it needs to be heard. Some of it you can keep, some of it you can use to help other people, some of it you don't ever have to talk about again. But it's really a powerful way to remember who you are. And there's a really famous quote called that says, "Just sit at your typewriter and bleed." And that is how we can get a lot of our trauma out. Is not necessarily at the typewriter, 'cause this was a long time ago, but however you write your best. We're going to start doing a journal as soon as you can. I would prefer you start doing it when you start doing your breath of fire, so you can kind of every day see how you feel, see what comes up. The famous Yogi Bhajan, had a practice where he would give people a 40-day meditation, and at the end of where they journaled every day for 40 days. And at the end of the 40 days, he would have them mail their journals to him to read and keep and honor, because there would always be such a huge transformation happening. And so we're definitely going to begin that process as well too. So I want to say again something about women's health. If you are here, you have probably tried a lot of stuff, either juice cleanses or coffee enemas, or you've just been buying rando supplements off the internet. This is a really extreme thing to do, and I don't recommend it. I've done the coffee enemas. I've done different sorts of cleanses. I was a raw foodist for a while. I had tried to get help with using different supplements. We need to slow down, not do something completely extreme, and do something very measured and very gentle. That's how we're going to know what works for us. And it's how we are going to be able to sustain our bodies. You can't really sustain yourself doing really harsh stuff or just doing kind of one thing after another. So I'm really passionate about sharing that element with women, that you do not need to do anything drastic. This is enough. The other thing that we're going to talk about in the next 6 weeks is process theology. So the way that spiritual transformation works is also rooted in the Western practice of process theology, which just means you go through your process. And some of the things we'll talk about are claims of absolute truth, how those can block honesty if we just sort of go around spouting this or this all the time and being really stuck in our mindset. Then it's not allowing for any change or any for us to unveil any other truth that comes up. We'll also use the 4 questions a lot. The 4 questions were created by Byron Katie, who had a life experience, whose name was Katie Byron, but she had a life experience that completely changed her, and she changed her name. And the 4 questions go something like this. You ask, what is going on here? What is happening here in this situation that's been triggering? And then the second question is, how can I know what's really happening here? So instead of sort of assuming an absolute truth about it, you ask this question: how can you know for sure? How much do you need more information? The third question is, what is sort of the root of this? What is the thought or the feeling that is really present here? And then the fourth question is, who am I without this thought? Who am I without this feeling? And inevitably, it's going to be, oh, I'm myself. I'm me, and I'm happy. That's usually the end result. But going through the process will help lead you there, because it's an experiential way to really think about what's happening. It's you start out asking questions, you finish feeling how it feels in your body. Another tenet of process theology is connecting with your spirit, and the idea that the spirit is our way into both knowing and sustaining our relationship to God. So being really connected to our spirit is how we get to know our higher power, or however we describe our universal forces. and sustaining that close relationship is being connected to our own spirit. So it's a really powerful practice as well. The other thing that I'm going to have everybody get started on in this week, or as soon as you can do it, is to start making and taking your own herbals. I want you to start taking some herbals now, and at the same time, start making those same ones so that at the end of these 6 weeks, you will have created 3 different herbals that you can start taking that you've made yourself. In the meantime, I want you to start taking 3 different herbal medicines that I'll tell you about. And again, this is all optional. This is if you want to. If you want to use a different herb, we have questions about which herbs to take or which herbs you would prefer, of course, just we can talk about it on the call and go from there. But I really want to stress that when we kind of make our own medicine and then we take it, there is something a little deeper of a healing that happens for us. We sort of really know what our body needs, and it's clear to me that it's a really powerful practice just to make our own medicine. And so learning to make our own tinctures takes and letting the tinctures sit takes a roughly 6 weeks, which is why I want everybody to kind of start getting that going. And then also to start taking that herbal medicine as soon as you can, so that you can decide which works for you and which doesn't, and kind of how much you need. What we're going to focus on with these herbals are adrenal stress, of course, and any kind of hormonal stuff, as well as just an overall kind of like getting rid of toxins. Mostly it's going to be like heavy metal stuff like aluminum, just stuff that's hard on the body. So, but it will mostly be to address adrenal fatigue. And I think this can really be of benefit to everybody. So back to process theology, we will be talking about our own spiritual rebirths here. And in my practice as a midwife, I was taught when I was a student when you go into a birth room, you ask, what is really going on here? You need to really figure out, you need some information, you need your intuition. Is this baby about to be born? Is this mom having too much pain for what's really happening? Is she in an emergency situation? Or is this just labor? And most of the time it's just labor, but you want to be sure. You want to ask, what is really going on here? And the companion and follow-up question to that is, where is God acting? God is always in the birth room, or the goddess, or however you identify your unseen supportive power. There's always support in our birth rooms. We just have to recognize it. The problem is that inherently there is a crisis of belief whenever we're going through a big change, a big spiritual rebirth. We come across feelings of, I can't do this, it's too hard, I hate everybody. Those are like real red flags that you're in the middle of a rebirth. And so we need to be each other's doulas, and we need to have, it's really nice to have a mentor. It's nice to have a midwife. In addition, when we're walking this labyrinth path of the spiritual rebirth, in my opinion, we need both a masculine and a feminine practice. And in process theology, that's what's considered the apophatic or the cataphatic way. One would be just prayer and contemplation, which is the feminine bhakti practice, which would be like yin yoga, very sort of visualization. And then the masculine practice is really the other side, where it's more direct, it's more like kundalini, it's more like really a stricter, faster way to address what's going on and to help us move forward. So I believe we need both, and we'll talk more about that as well. The way that we're going to start doing our own medicine is to get glass tincture bottles, which you can find online. They're very inexpensive. I don't think they're more than a couple of dollars each, and you're just going to need 3. You'll need your dried herbs. You really technically don't need more than an ounce of each. And you need some high quality tequila. I was taught to use tequila because it actually has some health benefits, whereas a lot of other alcohols don't, like any kind of grain alcohol doesn't. But tequila is an above ground agave plant sourced alcohol that's supposed to be nourishing in some ways to the body. So I like to suggest that, but you can use whatever you have lying around in terms of any kind of drinkable alcohol. And you can find these herbs at either a health food store or an online store. They shouldn't be very expensive either. It shouldn't be more than $20 to create this. So you will, in some kind of a small mason jar, depending on, what kind of works best for you, you would put an ounce of the herbs. You will fill it up to the top of the herbs, not the top of like the jar, but the top of the herbs with alcohol. And you let it sit for about 6 weeks. And it's best to be able to tilt it back and forth a few times each day, visit it, send it some positive energy while it sort of creates actually really what you need most in your body. It's a great way to kind of rebalance your system if you've been on prescription drugs of any kind for a long time. Like I was on, oh my gosh, everything from tetracyclines for years to antidepressants for a decade. I mean, it just anti-anxieties, stuff that I never really saw a benefit. And that's from being someone who was under the care of psychiatrists and trying different levels of strength of those medications over long period, like years, and never really feeling any different. And in fact, a lot of the times feeling worse. So this is really what I've relied on, the aspects of the benefits from licorice root, ashwagandha, and dandelion. So licorice root is very easy to take herb, and it is extremely beneficial for the adrenals. So I highly recommend it. Go ahead and buy a tincture of it as soon as possible and start taking 1 or 2 dropperfuls once or twice a day. Don't make it difficult, but it's another thing that I want you to get started so you can feel the benefits by the end of the 6 weeks. I also want you to incorporate a dandelion tincture and an ashwagandha tincture. Ashwagandha is great for hormones, hormone balancing. Dandelion is one of the most nutritious herbs that we can take. It's good for the liver, kidneys, circulation. It's just a very nourishing herb. And so you can take all of these together, but I definitely want everybody to start taking them as soon as possible. So you see the benefits and, start ordering your stuff or get some stuff and start making your own medicine so that, in about 6 weeks or so, you will be able to strain it into your little tincture bottle and start taking your own version of these medicines and really be able to enjoy it. So that is what I have for today. I know it's a lot. I can't wait to see all of you on the call and look for any additional handouts. And I will see you again really soon.